Okay, hello and welcome to this. I think it's our 5th Lambeth Food Story. We've been running these stories really for the last 9 months or so. And if you've not yet seen them, please do go and check them out. They are on our YouTube channel. So my name is Janie. I'm one of the incredible Edible Lambeth team, and a few of us are scattered around this Zoom room this evening. So tonight we are talking about soil. By now we've realised that good soil is pretty fundamental to life on this planet. I think that probably explains why so many people have joined us tonight. Thank you for finding the time to join, because I know it's pretty arduous being on the computer all day. At IEL, we represent over 500 food growers. We know how vital good soil is, so we've been lobbying for more composting of kitchen waste throughout the borough. We're working with MakeSoil.org. I'm hoping Sunny might be on this call today to set up community composting sites. If you've not yet looked at MakeSoil.org, please do take a look at that. And we've been talking to Lambeth Council about how things might be done differently. And thank you, council people. I can see Jason and Rachel are here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Our ambitious vision is that everyone who can't compost at home will have access to community composting. And to kind of kickstart this, I know lots of people are composting already, but to help this on its way, we're working with 6 housing estates. We've got money from the Mayor of London, and we're hoping that these housing estates will have community composting sites on them. We've got a long way to go with our ambition, but tonight we're going to hear from people who are making this happen in Lambeth and beyond. So just one housekeeping thing: if you're not speaking, it would be lovely if you could keep your mic on mute, and please put any questions you have for any of the speakers in the chat and we will try to get to them. We've got a pretty packed schedule of speakers, and I just want to have a quick check to see if everybody's here. Is Rosie here? I think if you're here, can you please put, and you know you're speaking, could you please put a message in the chat? That would be really helpful for us. So I'm not going to run through everybody. I think it'd take too long. So let's get going. We're completely thrilled to have Patrick Holden setting the scene for our food story tonight. Patrick's a farmer in Wales, but I think he grew up in London. He was involved with the Soil Association for 20 years and is now, is it a founding director of the Sustainable Food Trust in Bristol? He's nodding, yeah. When I checked out the vision of the Soil Association.
Oh, you muted.
Sorry, someone's muted me. When I checked out the vision of the Soil Association, I thought it was pretty much aligned to our vision at IEL. It's a vision for a healthy, thriving population, buying, growing, cooking and eating good food. But we can't do this without good soils, which is why we are here tonight. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I'm actually standing in for my daughter Alice, who's much younger and more attractive and actually much more versed in urban growing than I am, because she's actually practicing it, whereas I got out of the city aged 21 from Peckham, which is where I grew up, and I was one of the back to the landers in the 1970s, and I stayed in Wales, still on the same farm that 6 of us were emigrated to in 1973. My daughter grows in Dagenham, and I hope you'll have her as a future speaker, because she's written a book on urban growing and she does composting and everything. But I suppose what I would say about soil is that it is, in a way, think about our own stomachs, which are populated with microorganisms more numerous by several factors than the number of cells in our body. So we have a symbiotic relationship with microorganisms in our stomach. to digest our food. Plants don't have a stomach inside themselves. They have an external stomach. It is the soil. And the soil, imagine the soil as the collective stomach of all the plants on Earth. And they depend, as we do, on a symbiotic relationship with bacteria and fungal organisms and other myriad microorganisms to digest their own food, because their food is kind of partially decayed organic matter in the main, which they can't break down. But the bacteria and the mycelia of the mycorrhizal fungi and other fungi that are in the soil, in a healthy soil, is how they digest their food. And I think that's a wonderful, rather inspirational sort of image of the soil being the collective stomach of all plants. So I've got a farm in Wales, 300 acres, and the soil is its stomach. And so we need to feed the soil with decaying organic matter. And we do that in various ways with a crop rotation. And more recently, because actually livestock farms, because we got a herd of dairy cows and we make cheese from their milk. It's a raw milk cheese, matured for about a year, cheddar style, called Havod. And it comes from our 80 cow herd. And we're now the longest established organic farm in Wales. But I'm just telling this against myself, even though I ran the Soil Association for 15 years, and I've always been interested in soil. It's only in the last few years I've really realized quite what a miraculous thing it is. And it's been said, you know, we've got 30 harvests less left until we've run out of soil and all that kind of thing. And also that soil is the second largest carbon bank, only after the oceans. The soil used to hold an enormous amount of carbon, but during the industrial farming period, we've kind of squandered it, because farming, intensive farming, has been a kind of extractive industry, and it's dined out on the accumulation of fertility of hundreds, if not thousands of years, during which the weathering activity and good farming practices built soil. And in just these few short decades, we've not only used up all the organic matter, but we've also poisoned it really with a whole range of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which have become used as standard in agriculture. So the question arises, can we restore the lost fertility of the soil in sufficient order to avoid irreversible climate change? We've already lost a lot of biodiversity as well. And I think the answer is yes, we can. And if you imagine the food system as like a giant organism, we are the cells. And so our gardens are cellular. And so what we do in our gardens is mirroring the activity of my soil. There's no real difference. You know, we need to speed up soil building and composting and the return of organic waste. And in the case of urban dwellers, the harvesting of organic waste, either from kitchen waste or from parks or from other sources, and the composting of those wastes, whether, you know, I know you're doing community composting projects and all sorts of things like that, but actually we can just start in our own backyard collecting leaves. And if you just have a bit of concrete at the back of your house, it's incredible how in just a year or so, it will accumulate this sort of mulch of dust and decaying leaves and stuff, which is really the building blocks of soil. And certainly on my farm, I think I've just realized that we can actually speed up soil building by a significant degree, by a combination of crop rotations, which involve a fertility building phase with grass and clover, the composting of livestock manures, and livestock farmers in the UK have been historically terrible at composting. So we've just put up a shed where because it rains a lot in Wales, to compost our animal manures. And in your own garden, of course, rats are an issue, always are, but you know, you can get over that with various containers and stuff like that. You can build a simple compost heap, and you can start speeding up the process of growing soil in your own garden and build the organic matter. And through that, you will build the life and the nutrient density of your food. And if you want to read a bit more about soil, there's a guy called Gabe Brown who's written a book called Dirt to Soil, and he's got a huge farm in, I think it's in North Dakota, where he's practicing regenerative agriculture. He's a pretty good guy to learn from. There's another man called David Montgomery who's written a whole series of books about soil, including one about the history of soil. where he shows that civilizations have grown and subsequently collapsed in relation to their exhaustion of the soil, because most civilizations haven't learned very well about soil building. So really, we're standing on the edge of, a precipice, and what stands between us and our children's civilized life is our individual capacity either to manage the soil in our own backyards or to buy food which comes from farmers who are practicing regenerative, organic, sustainable agriculture. So I think there's a real reason for hope. But just to end on a slightly negative note, just to say how bad it is, there's a guy called Zach Bush, who some of you might have heard of. He's a medical doctor in America, and he trained as a medical student, and he found that all these patients were suffering from a whole range of cancers and immune system disorders and food intolerances that the medical data didn't show existed, before he sort of became a medical student and trained in medicine. And he came to the conclusion that what was going on was that the plants that they were eating had been poisoned by the soil. So the plants were in good health because their immune systems had been compromised by poor soil. And so they were passing on those disorders, plant disorders, to the people who ate them. And one of the things that came to his attention is in one of the podcasts is that kale is supposed to be the superfood, but he noticed that even the patients on the kale that they were being prescribed as juice or whatever were not responding. And he knew a lot about endocrine disruptors and all the things that are going on in agriculture. And he concluded that it was a lot to do with pesticides, and particularly Roundup, which is widely used in urban environments, probably is used in Lambeth. I don't know if it is, but if it is still used, you should have an absolute campaign to ban it, because it is probably one of the worst poisons which are used in agriculture very, very widely now. It's even sprayed on wheat before it's combine harvested. But all this goes back to our responsibility to steward and build the fertility of the soil. I better stop now. Oh, look, I'll stop. I'm a dairy farmer, but I used to be a carrot grower. This is a carrot that I'm proud to say I grew in our own soil, which we've been farming for 48 years this June in a crop rotation. And by the way, just on another point, all the vegetables that you're eating these days, they're coming from arable monocultures, mostly in the eastern counties. They're not part of this fertility of soil building, which I've described. And so actually you need to buy organic carrots from proper farming systems where there's a crop rotation, or better still, grow your own. Thanks very much for listening to me.
Thanks very much, Patrick. And yeah, horrifying that line through kale. And yes, we are working on the glyphosate in Lambeth, and the council has agreed to stop spraying. Not yet completely, but we've been running a campaign for a couple of years on that one.
Well, if you listen to Zach Bush, he spells it out. It's probably the most serious, because it's an antibiotic, it really screws all the biological processes in the soil. And of course it passes on to us. It's obvious. It
is obvious, yeah. So absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much for starting us. That's absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. I'm going to hand over to Tom Daniel, who is a director of the Compost Club. Did you?
Oh, you got muted again.
I'm muted again. Did you set the Compost Club up? Tell us about it.
Sure thing. I'm going to screen share if that's all right,
yeah.
So that I can share this little presentation I've used. I've used this opportunity to speak as a sort of catalyst to make a presentation about what we've been doing. So I realized that you guys, I'm only going to use some of the slides because it's going to be totally preaching to the converted otherwise, but it's going to be good because I won't have to go so fast. Okay, so Compost Club is a project that we started in lockdown. Can everyone hear me all right? I'll just put this on big screen. Compost Club is a project we started in lockdown of last year, when for the first time I can remember, everyone ran out of compost and there was a huge rush to buy seeds, and this was one thing that could happen in the closure of the world as we know it. So we aspire to take our knowledge and passion for composting and make a replicable model, a model that could work in other places, and there's many reasons for this, which I will come to in the talk. But I just want to show you this picture up here is our composting station. We use these tumblers which break matter down very fast, and then we use the power of worms. And a huge part of compost, is about harnessing the powers of all of the other creatures that really make our existence possible. You can see this wood lice under here, which is a creature which clears heavy metals from the soil. So this is really kind of we think of it as biodiversity compost, and we want to design a system where people can harness the powers of these insects and of course all the microbes which are really making the compost. So I'm gonna hopefully skip to this slide. So this is a 1-minute film I've got to share with you guys, which kind of says what we're doing kind of faster than I'd be able to do in slides. But basically, to cut a long story short, with this system that we are promoting, we are making 250 litres of compost in these tumblers, which we've now got about 7 of, dotted around Brighton. So when we collect people's food waste, we only have to take it short distances to the tumblers, and the places we locate them get 50% of the compost, where we use the rest to give back to our members. So people are signing up for membership. Depending on how much compost they want a year, it's £8 or £15 a month. And with these tumblers and earthworm bays, we're producing about 3,000 kilograms. We're collecting 3,000 kilograms per month. And we're making usable compost in 21 days and saleable compost in just 4 months. So
here at Compost Club, we collect food waste from local residents and businesses using reclaimed buckets from the construction trade. We take this matter to our Duraform hot compost tumblers, where it's broken down at high temperatures for 21 days to kill any human pathogens.
Let's see what it's going to be like today. Whoa, mushroom land. Oh my God, we're basically worm farmers.
We see ourselves as stewards working in collaboration with billions of microorganisms and earthworms in service to the soil. We shred cardboard and use that as a carbon source, and also offer this to some of our members for home composting purposes. We burn scrap wood to charcoal to store carbon, to enrich our compost and help us green our landscapes, empower people to grow local healthier food, and create community among our members and community growers, as well as creating a wildlife habitat in the gardens and also in the compost piles themselves.
The size of this pile.
Yeah.
This is just full from top to bottom, like this, with worms.
Biocomplete compost.
Biocomplete, biochar enriched,
Cacao colour.
thermophilically broken down, and then worm casting up to the max, and still going on.
it's a little film we had to make. So we got nominated for an award by what were they called? The green something or other award, but we didn't win. But it was nice to be recognised for starting a compost club. And Compost Club started from Old Tree Brewery, which is actually a kombucha brewery. Might sound completely different. We used our aim is to use the proceeds from drinks to invest in edible landscapes, and through that process we found that compost is the best way of, the main sort of value store from the process of brewing drinks, and enriches the soil to make the edible landscapes work. We did this garden project in Brighton where we transformed this landscape into a sort of forest garden in under 2 years, and we did that by making compost with these tumblers and having a really quick turnover, like a really quick nutrient cycle, and then mulching the soil. And everyone said, how did you make that garden so green? How did you do it? So it gave us the confidence that we were sort of on to something. And then we've further sort of gone on to invest in the tumblers for Compost Club. This is the background. This is Michael and I who started it, coming from a context of being in Brighton for a very long time, and really seeing this as a city which, although it has a green reputation, is a city that has not got its crap together at all, to put it mildly. It's constantly like horrible rubbish dumped dumping everywhere, like still this year they were putting up truckfuls of leaves and obviously taking them to some sort of waste disposal site, almost certainly not to become compost. And then obviously we're a city that found out last year that most of our recycling has been going to New Haven waste incinerator. And furthermore, the South Downs are surrounding us, which are really over-farmed, over-grazed, and often look like even the grass is struggling to grow. So we want to have a future where composted organic matter is leaving the towns and growing food for people where it's needed, with 0 food miles and 0 composting miles. Next slide. So yeah, it's this motivation is to stop treating the soil like it's dead, and to feed the whole ecosystem. It's like whole ecosystem composting, and this is the sort of main motivation behind our project. This the sort of knowledge base is I guess you guys have heard, but Elaine Ingham, we've done her course, really recommend it. It's amazing. And she's all about the soil food web, and this is the soil food web, and it's basically nature's operating system. And being at this close to extinction as we all are, we need to get a grip on what this is and really use it and make the best compost to feed all of this life, you know, the fungi, the nematodes, the protozoa, and the microarthropods, the invisible half of nature. And then we can create a sort of habitat expansion food system out of this really kind of destructive current system. So we did the course, and we learned how to make compost teas and the best compost. And the next stage for us, we're going to launch a lab and get a microscope so we can actually tell what the good biology is, and we want to offer that far and wide. So yeah, to try and transform agriculture really in the next few, you know, handful of years that we have, to reverse this system of the removal of biodiversity. And we can do that from the microscopic level up to through the whole ecosystem. And one of the things we've learned that is so important is fungi. Fungi is the solution to climate change. Fungi is drawdown, like fungi is made of carbon. And it's not just fungi, the other ways of harnessing the powers of microbes, like bokashi. So in the summer, we put bokashi in our members' buckets because that ferments the buckets, and it means it doesn't smell bad, and it helps it ferment as it's sort of in transit. And there's all these benefits to farming, to fungi, which I'm sure you guys know something about, but there's a lot that we're doing wrong in composting, and I'm really concerned that a lot of composting is actually doing more harm than good, and that needs to change. So a few things we learned on the course is that if you're only making compost from nitrogen-rich things, you're basically just creating the conditions for bacteria. And if you've just got a compost that's rich in bacteria, you're not going to be able to grow a wide range of crops. You're basically going to be growing from the brassica family and plants like that. You're not, without fungal food, without fungal sort of balance in the soil, you won't have the full diversity of microbes that will make healthy plants. There's no such thing as multi-purpose compost, and most of our compost is actually waste reduction compost. It's pasteurized, it's been cooked too much, it's got the wrong color, and a lot of gases are being wasted just as they are when you go to landfill if you let compost go anaerobic. And that's not the worst thing that you can do. If you let compost go anaerobic, you can cause fires, you can attract slugs, and the reason you are causing fires is because of alcohol production. This is like, you know, the yeast that we want to encourage in our kombucha or drink production happens in soil if you let it go anaerobic, which then causes fires and attracts slugs. So there's another reason that you want to stop anaerobic conditions, and that is that they are extremely they can be pathogenic. It's aerobic organisms which are beneficial. You can literally drink them. So there's these are some of the inputs. This is what the composting system we want to see. We want it to be replicated. Inputs are carbon sources and food waste and people's food waste. Outputs are all of these amazing health-giving edible products that we can produce. One of the things that makes our composting model kind of viable is the communication technologies that we have. We started a group called the Giant Earthworms, and these are people who are part of our system who they only pay us £2 a month to bring their own compost in buckets that we give them to the tumblers, and that helps us because they tumble the tumblers, so we don't have to visit the tumblers every day to keep them tumbling, because the quicker you tumble them, the quicker you'll have nice compost. And I just love this, like, you know, idea of a resurgence in community composting, because people need each other again, rather than this consumer society where we just buy everything and don't need each other. So yeah, really what I want to sort of put forward is that, obviously, because plants feed the soil and the plants feed us, we need to encourage as many people as possible to feed the microbes that feed plants, and we can identify these, and if we have that knowledge and can make that compost, we can turn all grey landscapes green. Charles Darwin described earthworms as nature's plough, and Charles Dowding is the sort of pioneer of no-dig gardening, which this has to come hand in hand with. There's no point making all of this amazing fungal-rich compost if you're going to put it through a sieve, and there's no point making all this amazing fungal-rich compost if you're going to dig the soil ever. You never need to dig the soil. We have to have a revolution that is, you know, based on creating the most high-quality organic matter and never digging the soil. That's just some earthworms moving. This is the order that I think we should focus on: healthy soil, healthy insects, healthy plants, healthy animals, healthy people, healthy world. These slides are stolen from the Instagram page of Earthfort. I don't know if you guys know them, but they are brilliant at teaching how the soil really works with these amazing illustrations. So I recommend giving them a follow. And finally, you can find out more about Compost Club on the websites that we have here. And in the near future, we're going to offer some Zoom talks about our composting system and how to do it. We want to offer one that people could do at home. And we also have a good relationship with the manufacturer of the tumblers that we can give a discount to if people are interested. So just get in touch with us and keep an eye on the website for our workshops and stuff. That would be really nice. And I think that's everything.
Thank you so much, Tom. That was like on speed. There was about enough information there for, I don't know how long. Could you put some of the links in the chat? Because I think things like Elaine Ingham would be great for people.
100%, yeah.
Earththought, put your website in as well. Lots to think about. Thank you very much for that. It was absolutely brilliant. I'm slightly kind of switching order here because some people have struggled to get in, but I'm going to ask Jerome now if he'd like to say anything. So Jerome is part of a community garden in Lambeth, and do you want to take your screen off now, Tom? Do you do that?
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, yeah.
Okay. So he's part of the Carmelita community garden. And I'm hoping Jerome can unmute and tell us a little about his experience of setting up community composting in Lambeth. Are you there, Jerome?
Yeah, I'm here.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
so he's got a problem with his camera. So, but I think there's a couple of pictures that Michelle can share.
All right, perfect. It's been a great journey, kind of like linking up with yourself, Jamie, and getting those compost bins, made. Obviously, we live in urban communities, and composting is not something which is on the top of our list. However, as you all know, the benefits of making your own compost and the great nutritional value it can put back into the soil. Initially it was, as you can see in the picture there, Bill had set up, he had helped to make the pallets, and I kind of gave him a hand to make it as well, just because I had that passion of getting it set up. I mean, as you know, there's a big increase in the landfills, which are just filling up with like our kitchen scraps, and obviously MakeSoil along with Incredible Edible, have kind of come together to mitigate all of those scraps going to the landfill and being able to process them in our communities and share our journey with others. So yeah, obviously, why does composting matter? Obviously, we are reducing the methane emissions, which are going to landfill, which are bad for the environment and bad for the climate. Obviously, in the landfill, all of these kitchen scraps and stuff, they take many months to decompose. So again, this is a process which we can start at grassroots levels in communities to help save money and save the environment. In terms of like nutrients and stuff, I'll give an example. If you're growing carrots and onions in a raised bed, let's say for 2 growing seasons, eventually all of those nutrients are going to be uptaken by the roots for those carrots and onions to grow, which means that nutrients of like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK, will be deficient. So if you top up and make really nutrient-rich compost and then apply that to your beds, along with some leaf mulch, for instance, it will help to bring those levels up. So, so yeah, boosting nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels in the soil is a good benefit of making your own soil. In terms of educational tool, I believe that for our younger generation, we should be putting this in the curriculum. I believe that there should be more of it across the curriculum to let our younger generation know and make that compost, you know the worms, the specific common names for the worms and what they do. So specifically in our compost site at Carmelita, I purchased over 1,000 branding worms, which are common names. They have other names like red worm, red wrigglers, etc. But so we have a lot of worms in our compost bin, which means that when the soil supporters are putting their scraps into our compost bins, it means that those worms are getting through them quite quick. So in essence, we need a more supply of kitchen scraps to keep up with the hungry worms. So yeah, I really believe education is key to kind of promote more soil sites across Vauxhall Gardens estate. This is just a trial, and I believe that in the future there'll be a lot more compost bins like this across the estate with educational sessions and programs pointing the benefits and highlighting the benefits. In terms of how it's going so far, we have up to 15 soil supporters on our MakeSoil website. It was a bit slow at first because of COVID as well, but just engaging with local residents that were walking by, asking do you live local, and just getting into conversation, was able to get those 15 supporters. So it's just a start, and with some PR and marketing, we're hoping to kind of reach out to other organizations and areas that would like to support community growing and making what I call is gold. I call making compost gold, because it really is gold, and you have to appreciate the worms and the microbes and all of the small insects that just make this good stuff. So yeah, that is me. In terms of engagement, I believe the MakeSoil website is quite limited. I mean, people can sign up and become a soil supporter, but there's not no kind of messages or anything set up so that there could be more engagement off the platform. So maybe like a WhatsApp group with all your soil supporters will be a nice way to relay information to them. And to conclude, how can we make our own soil? First, you have to determine what type of composting you're going to do. Of course, you're not going to do in-vessel composting because it's for more big organisations like Veolia. But just maybe contact your local council, see if they have any compost bins available. They usually sell some, but it would be nice if they could have an initiative where they give some away for free. But yeah, contact your council for a compost bin, or if you can purchase one, purchase one. It's always about starting small, so you don't want to try to create too much compost. Just do a bit of research on the differences between the browns, the greens, and the levels and stuff, and then just start on a small scale. Like if you've got a garden, however, if you don't have a garden, then it's about trying to find your community champion, someone that can put that forward, or contacting your tenants residents association to try and speak to someone to get it through. But yeah, start small and just self-study, learn about the processes, and yeah, find your local MakeSoil site nearby to you, support your local MakeSoil site, or if you're feeling adventurous, set up your own MakeSoil site and start retailing those kitchen scraps and teaching and sharing with others.
Jerome, thank you so much. I know Jerome's come out of a meeting to talk with us, so really appreciate him letting us in on all of that, some useful stuff, especially about the limitations of MakeSoil.org, and nothing better really than developing a community of composters, which we really hope that we can encourage and support on all our estates and different community gardens around the borough. So I'm going to ask Rosie to give us a quick run through of her project, which is part of Brighton and Hove Food Partnership. And she also is in Brighton, but I think this will be interesting because she's partnering with the council. It's quite an interesting model to listen to. Thank you, Rosie.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm just seeing if I can share my screen. Can somebody nod if they can hear me okay and see my shared screen? Great, thanks, Janie. So my name's Rosie. I work for the Brighton Hove Food Partnership, and I'm the compost coordinator. Our scheme is fully funded by Brighton Hove Council, in recognition of the fact that due to contracts with Veolia, they can't do roadside collection. And we believe that community composting, however it's done, is actually a better solution anyway. So I'll explain a little bit about the way it works. From the sounds of it, I don't need to repeat what my lovely fellow compost enthusiasts have already said about why it's important and how it works. But I'll tell you how our scheme works. The council pay for 2 days of admin time that myself and my colleagues share. I concentrate on setting up new schemes, and my colleague helps with maintaining the existing schemes. There's 40 schemes all over Brighton in local areas, so it might be a cluster of a few different roads. Generally, people sign up to a scheme that is within walking distance from their house. Each scheme is managed by 2 volunteer monitors. The monitors look after it. They help to create rotas for all of the members, to help turn it, to aerate it. They help with reporting any maintenance issues to the food partnership. We then in turn employ our compost handyman to go and do repairs to the bins. The monitors do the inductions for new members in the community that are signing up. They manage lists on shared Google Sheets of waiting lists and email addresses for all the members so that they can send them reminders to add more card. As Tom explained, if you haven't got the right balance and you don't add enough card, then it goes smelly and it goes bad. So sometimes members need a little bit of reminding. The monitors also are in charge of swapping over padlocks. So each scheme has usually a set of between 3 and 5 compost boxes. Once one gets full, the combi padlock gets transferred over to the next box, and all the other boxes have an ordinary padlock with a key. So the members can only access the active bin that has a secret code, and that code isn't shared with people beyond the scheme, because otherwise you'd get people putting all sorts of things in there that shouldn't be in there. And then once the compost is ready, the compost monitors let us know at the Food Partnership, and we've got a mailing list where we send out an alert to local gardeners to come and collect it. It's offered to members of the scheme as well, so they can take it for their own gardens or allotments or houseplants or whatever they fancy. The first picture that you can see is one of our members who had helped to set up a new scheme in her local park space, and she was so excited when it finally arrived, and it just sums up the enthusiasm and resilience that always astounds me that members of the community have at volunteering time. It's just a running joke in the office that compost members and monitors are so keen and so enthusiastic, and we couldn't do our method without them. So this kind of setup really relies on those volunteers, of which we've got 40 schemes, so 80 volunteers that we are managing and supporting and training and communicating with. So they do really good job. So let me just go on to the next picture. This is a lovely picture pre-COVID days, as you can see, when we were allowed to be closer to each other. This was a new scheme. Again, we have like a little celebration when they open, and all the community are invited to attend, and it's a really nice way for communities to get together. People often say that, you know, they've made friends with their neighbour across the road that they wouldn't have otherwise had a reason to speak to. So the compost scheme does more than just make soil and help to divert food waste. It builds communities and builds networks. So it's just, yeah, it's a lovely thing to do in local neighbourhoods. It really brings people together. It's so nice seeing parents bringing their kids along and teaching their kids about the food and the worms and watching it all break down. I'm going to move on next. I've got a 30-second video of our compost bin design. So we have a really wonderful handyman. He calls himself Tim the Bin, and he made us this little video so you can see the structure and how easy they are to make. Okay, so that's the little design for our bins. I'll move on to talking a little bit about rats, because I saw that coming up in the chat. In our scheme, we don't accept any meat or any dairy or eggshells unless they're washed. Because all of those things attract rats, or cooked food, you know, everything like that. So it's literally just raw fruit and veg and, you know, tea bags, that sort of thing. Occasionally at some schemes we have had problems historically, not with the new bin design, since it was redesigned last year. The old design had lots of spaces underneath where rats could burrow and hide, and encourage them. The new design is much better and also has some metal mesh with a well-managed scheme, where it's monitored closely, where it's turned regularly, and all the right things are going in it and none of the wrong things are going in it, and the boxes are situated in the right kind of place. We haven't had any issues. So we've discovered over the years that bins that are located next to lots of bushes or close to other bins, like general waste bins, much more likely to be problematic. When we've moved the location due to problems out into the open, it's really helped to reduce that issue. And we've been running the scheme for nearly 10 years, and during that time it's been a problem in 3 sites, and we've managed to overcome it by improving the design and changing the location. When we have consultations with the local community about the fact that bins might be put on their street, and we go and we give people an opportunity to say, yes, I'd love them there, or no, I don't want them there. We often have people ask about that, and so we say, let's just try it for 6 months, and if you're worried or if it doesn't work out, we can change it. It's not permanent, they're not built in stone. So we like to give an opportunity for people to express their concerns and move it if it doesn't work. I'm just having a quick look in the chat. How does it work when they fill up? Where do people put their food? There's a couple of boxes in each location, and once one bin gets full, they then move to a different bin, and the one that was full starts breaking down. So there's always capacity for the amount of members in that scheme, but because the schemes are so popular, we've had to stop new people joining them, because otherwise the bins would get too full. Hedvig does ring a bell. Someone's mentioned that in the chat, so she may well have been involved in the past. Members per bin, with the new design, we can have about 40 members per scheme. It's give or take a bit. You could have a household of a family of 6, or you could have a person who's 1. All of those 6 people might be vegan and getting through loads and loads of fruit and veg. It really varies. It's not a hard and fast rule, so that's another reason we ask the monitors to keep an eye on how quickly they're filling up. I probably haven't answered all the questions, but I'm aware of time, so Janie, if you want me to stop there, I can.
Maybe, because I would like to ask another couple of people, but I'm so pleased people have been asking questions, and numbers are really interesting. Number of volunteers, someone asked about that, because it's quite a sizable number of volunteers, but I can see that there's so much enthusiasm and excitement around it, which is quite amazing. So we'll definitely be coming to you for some advice on how to make this happen in Lambeth.
Very happy to help, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing. So I'm going to ask Tom Dobson, who is part of Loughborough Junction farm, to just share with us a little bit about progress on his composting scheme.
Hello everyone, I'll just try and share my screen if that's okay. And can someone just nod that they can hear me? Is this working?
Yeah, can hear
perfect. You. Okay, so I'll try and be quick, and I'm aware of time. I'll just try and get this full screen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the anaerobic digester project that we're proposing at the Loughborough farm in Loughborough Junction in South London. So some of you might be aware of the space, but this is or was the Loughborough farm probably about 4 years ago now, and it's gone through a bit of development where we're constantly negotiating with the council about how we remain on the land. And in that process, we've actually put in for quite a big funding application to create a community industrial space, which has now been built. And as part of that, we're proposing this anaerobic digester. So the farm used to sit in this triangular site here. It's now going to expand across the whole site in and amongst these other buildings. The front building is like a shared textile space, and the rear building is a shared kitchen space. So there's quite a lot of opportunity around the amount of food waste that's being produced on site from the shared kitchens. We also have a community cafe across the road, which is also producing food waste and uses the produce which is grown from the farm. So the next step of this project for us is proposing this anaerobic digester. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to test micro anaerobic digestion on a scale where it can actually deal with the amount of food waste which has been produced in the urban environment. And it's been proposed in this location here. So there's lots of commentary about anaerobic digestion, about whether what's more beneficial, straight up composting, which is aerobic versus anaerobic. And there's pros and cons of both systems. For anaerobic digestion, the real benefit is that it can really capture the energy as well as just the nutrients. So it captures the methane, which is normally produced in, say, when food goes to landfill. This captures that methane and can then be used to kind of power heating or power buildings, or it can be turned into fuel for cars as well. And we're trying to produce this at a scale that it will power all of these buildings. So if we can get this anaerobic digester through the planning application, which it's about to go through, it will produce enough energy to power, all the buildings on site. So we've touched on why we need to compost and things already, but I guess the key thing about sending food to landfill is it puts it into an anaerobic process, which then creates methane, which is really bad for the environment. So the anaerobic digestion system captures that methane. And this is what we're proposing, just a quick visual of what's, as I was saying, it's about to go into the planning application. And we're trying to set this up as a scheme so that it also trials waste collection from local housing estates. We're on the edge of the Loughborough estate, which is one of the biggest estates in Lambeth. And the real aim would be to try and capture back some of these contracts that go out to big companies like Veolia and see how it can be managed on for those that want to, on a more sustainable level. And like we said before, trying to reduce food miles, etc. The benefit of a scheme like this is we're trying to get it so that it's financially sustainable. So this system that we're proposing will take about 1 cubic meter of food waste per day. And that's on a level so that essentially people pay to get rid of their food waste, and then we also sell the gas and sell the fertilizer that comes out of it. That creates a business model, which means that it pays for a member of staff and pays for any rental needs, etc. So we're trying to test this smallest scale possible that is still financially viable without purely relying on volunteers. I won't go too far into this because this is the technicalities of anaerobic digestion, but it's an interesting system. Happy to share these slides with anybody who wants them. And here's just some of the images of what's being proposed. And the key challenge that we're hitting up against is, I guess, because it's a relatively unknown technology in terms of like the eyes of the planner and the eyes of local residents. There's a lot of fear about what this means, and it might be the same fears that other community compost projects get as well. So around the ideas of smell and vermin and who's going to manage it properly, etc. So the key battle for us over the last few years has been to try and demonstrate that this is a safe process. It isn't going to cause a nuisance locally. And I think that's what's going to be the crux of whether this is successful in getting planning permission or not. But if we fail in this location, we'll go to a location which is slightly further away from housing. We've kind of purposely picked a site which is quite close to housing so that we can deal with a lot of these issues. So if somebody else wants to do the scheme, a similar scheme again, there's a precedent for it. And I'll just finish by clicking through a few of the slides of what it's hopefully going to look like. And I haven't looked on the chat, but I'll stop sharing. And
Thanks.
I'll leave it there, Jenny.
Thanks so much. It's absolutely great to see such an ambitious thing happening in such an urban environment. So very good luck with that. I really hope you get funding. You should put something in the chat about how we find out about that. unless I missed that. I'm sorry if I did. Really just amazing model, and something that I don't know enough about. So very helpful.
Happy to chat. We might want your support for the planning application.
Ah, well, very good. Okay, I'd like that. I love Loughborough Farms, you know, and I used to volunteer at the Platform Cafe, so great place. And I thought, we are running out of time, but was very keen to keep this to an hour. We started a few minutes late. If Lou is here, I think he's been going in and out of this Zoom meeting because he's in New York. I just thought it might be quite fun to hear from somebody. I'll just tell you how much during, so.
Hi, I'm right here. Yes,
oh,
I'm here.
Great, Lou, thank you. So I'm just going to explain that I visited quite a while ago the New York compost scheme, and I could not believe how amazing it was. And I know that this had to shut down during the pandemic, and there's this amazing figure of £80,000 of food scraps that you've collected. So let's just hear about it from Rocky the Pug, who is, I don't know who it is, your nemesis, whatever.
No, Rocky is everything but my nemesis. He's actually our pug, and he became the spug pug of our operation, hence Astoria Pug. When the city shut down the NYC Compost Project, my partner and I and Rocky started collecting food scraps in the back of our car. It was an incredibly disorganized affair, but nonetheless, we were collecting right around 500 to 700 pounds of food scraps every weekend. Now, 42 weeks later, we're collecting a little bit over 3,000 pounds of food scraps. We've teamed up with the New York City Compost Project, and we're doing this really to highlight how important composting is in New York City. We don't charge people because we really believe that it's an essential service. So we are donation-based, and our next step is to introduce 24/7 drop-off sites in Astoria, Queens, to facilitate the dropping off of food scraps in New York City. So yeah, that's.
I can see that Belinda's saying you're being very modest, that you've done so much. It does sound incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. And
thank you so much. Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well, right now we're also fighting, and I'm gonna put a link very shortly. We're fighting to save big reuse from getting evicted. To summarize, big reuse composters or processes between 39 and 44% of New York City's food scraps. In half an acre land that actually owns that is actually owned by New York City Parks. New York City Parks wants that half acre back, and they want to turn it into a parking lot. Okay. So we're fighting very hard. We're using our platform to make sure that New York City Parks is accounted, being made accountable for that.
Very good. Well, it's a lot more than we're managing at all. So yeah, put something in the chat as to how we can support you on that one.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Very good to hear from you. Okay, so I was keen to do it in an hour, and we've done it in an hour. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your varied contributions. There's been such food for thought, and hoping that it's inspiring you to think about how you might set up community composting round the corner from you. At IEL, we will be keeping on with this one because we think it's really important. We don't want all our kitchen waste trucked out of the city when we can actually transform it into stuff that will make our soils so much better for the food growing that we want to do more of. So thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you again at another event like this. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Cheers.
much.
Bye.
Nice
Bye,
one.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Lovely.
Everyone.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you all.
And you. And
Yeah.
you.
Really great. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.